Aloha, and welcome to History 241 Session 21, which deals with the Mongol Empire. My name is Abdul Karim Khan. I teach here at Leeward Community College. Please go to WebCT and check out the email address and the phone number, and call me or contact me whenever you want to, and I'll get back to you. About the WebCT, please also look for some schedules, the scheduled assignments or any test or any, whatever you need to do. So please do that on time. And if you want to contact me, as I said, you can contact me anytime you want to, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Today we're going to be talking about the Mongol Empire in this session 21, but we have split it. There would be another session, session 22, also about the Mongols. So in this presentation, it goes from about 1200 to about 1241. So this is going to be a split session, session 21, and another one to be followed in session 22. So let's see what we did last time in terms of the Sung Dynasty, sort of a review of what we did last time. We talked about the Northern Sung Dynasty, how it started, and how it unified after a lot of problems in China, how the unification was achieved. And after unification was achieved, China was back on its course, peace and prosperity that the Chinese loved, and that was also achieved during the Northern Sung Dynasty. However, the Sung Dynasty was plagued by barbarian invasions, and that brought an end to the Northern Sung Dynasty, and especially a group of people that we talked about, the Jurchen people who lived in the north. And those were sort of Mongol people. Also, we talked about the Southern Sung Dynasty that moved to south, and it continued the Sung culture, the Sung tradition, and China lived in peace and prosperity, but unfortunately, again, barbarian invasions that even brought down the Sung Dynasty. Even if it ended, the Sung Dynasty, both northern and southern, the Song culture, it continued. And so that Song culture, as I also said, that it was basically established in the Tang dynasty, the previous dynasty. And so Tang and Sung, so far culture is concerned, they go together. Although the Sung, they improved on whatever there was in the Tang dynasty, as every age, so far material culture is concerned, so far inventions are concerned, every succeeding age is improvement upon the preceding age. So in that case, the Song culture was much more improved in terms of trade, especially in terms of food production, agriculture, because more canals had been dug and more water has been brought to different regions in China, and a lot of other regions, areas in China that previously could not produce anything. Now, thanks to the new technology and the new canals, irrigation networks, barren land was brought under cultivation. So food supplies were improved. Also, you might have noticed from south, rice was taken, and now it was cultivated also in the north. So the northern people could also enjoy, rice. Previously, they were stuck up with wheat. So that's how the Sung dynasty improved upon the Tang dynasty. But unfortunately, because of the barbarian invasions, China lived, to the barbarians who lived in the north, and that's why it, was brought down. So let's see one of the barbarian groups, that the Mongols, that we will talk about in today's presentation. So back to the presentation. In introduction, as I said, we will talk about, the Mongol Empire, who the Mongols were, how their empire, started, and how it became such a huge, big empire. The role of Genghis Khan, what he did, and also the role of the military. Mongol military and the conquest that they, achieved from Japan to Poland, and you can see, it's a huge, big area. Also, we would talk about the dissensions and the divisions in the Mongol Empire and how this empire, not because of any other force from outside, but because of the internal forces of dissensions and divisions, how the Mongol Empire would be brought down. So we will talk about the Mongols in this presentation 21 and the next presentation 22. So let's see what we have today. The Mongols. Mongols, these were one of several nomadic clans and tribes that lived in the north of China and in the west of China. That's a sort of geographical location that I'm talking about. Some of these groups that were related to the Mongols, those were the Yaka group, and most historians believe that the Mongols that we talk about in this presentation, or the celebrated Mongols who made this great empire, they were in fact more related to the Yaka people than anybody else. But beside the Yaka, there were the Xiongnu, who are known in history, in European history, as the Huns. They were there in the north. The Liao people, they were there in the north. The Jurchen people, these were the people, the Jurchen especially, who brought down the Song dynasty, north and south. The Manchu people, they were there in Manchuria especially. And these Manchu people later on, they would get their own empire in China. They would impose themselves on China and would have their own dynasty. The Merkit people and the Kirat people, some of these two, the Merkit and the Kirat, these people were the one time the enemies of the Mongols and another time the friends, and then the status would change. And last, the Tatar or the Tartar, or the Tartar, this is the original terminology, Tatar. But among the Europeans, they were also known as Tartar. And the reason they were known as Tartar was that this terminology came out of another term, Tartarius. Tartarius was in Greek mythology, which later on the Europeans and the Christian also, sort of adopted and would refer to it. Tartarius, this was the lowest part of hell, wherever that hell was, to the imagination, or according to the mythology of the Greeks. This was the worst part of hell. And when these Mongols, they invaded Europe, it shocked the Europeans, the brutality, the cruelty that the Mongols perpetrated upon people. It shocked them. So they said, these people must have been coming from hell. Where were these people all these years? We never seen such ferocious and cruel and brutal people. And since their ethnic name was related to Tartar, Tatari in local languages, so that's why they gave them this wrong type of nomenclature or name, Tartar, which was a reference that these people had emerged out of the lowest part of hell, and they had come to the earth to terrorize people and to massacre people. And so, some church people, they sort of, as it has happened so many times, not only to the Christians, but also to the Muslims, that these were, a punishment from God. The Mongols, they were punishment from God because Muslims or Christians, they did not, behave the way they should have, or they were committing sins, and so God was punishing them right now, right here on this earth, in the shape of sending these Mongols to, chastise them and punish them, massacre them. So hence the terminology, Tartar, T-A-R-T-A-R. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. This particular group of Mongol that we've been talking about in this presentation, they lived close to this river Orkhan, which is in Mongolia, present-day Mongolia. And they lived around this lake Baikal and in the valley of Lake Baikal. A very important place because this river and this lake Baikal in Mongolia especially the place where the Mongols lived, this was the only place that could make life possible. So that's why they would hold on to the valley and to the river and would not let any other person or people to come and take over the place. So that's why this Lake Baikal and Orkhan River were very important for the sustenance and the maintenance of life on part of the Mongols. This is River Orkhan, or the Orkhan River in Mongolia. And boy, in that place, arid place as it is, this could be a matter, a difference between life and death, and hence the importance of the Orkhan River. So far the lake is concerned, one of the greatest, if not the great lake of fresh water, right there in a place, like a desert that you don't have anything, and here is a huge big lake of fresh water. And of course this was, one piece of land that was worthy to kill for and be killed for. So that's why natural resources, or the lack of it, very important. And when you are living in a desert or in a steppe land where there's nothing to eat, and there is little bit water to drink, or that water makes it possible for you to grow whatever you could grow naturally there, then it was very precious piece of land, or very good river or lake that these people enjoyed. So hence the role of River Orkhan and the Lake Baikal in the lives of the Mongol people. Let's see the terrain of the Mongol people, that they lived on it and they loved it. And that was also sort of a problem, because they had lived and they were naturally like accustomed to the life on the steppes or the grasslands. They could not believe, and they could not live in high mountains, number one, nor they could live in dense forests like other people did, like Southeast Asia, nor they could live in oceanic type of a place, surrounded by a lot of water like Japan. So they were accustomed to this land that did not give them much, and yet they could not go to other lands that would give them everything. And so hence this being accustomed to a geography which is lacking so much in food, and yet people cannot leave that place. That is, a strange thing that repeats itself in history. Sometimes you wonder why these people are living in a place that does not give them anything, like mountains. They cannot leave their mountains, and they don't want to. Even if they go somewhere, they come back to it, and you would not be able to survive, but these people, they love it there, and that's their home. So that's why, they cannot leave it. Let's see the grasslands of the Mongols that lived in. The Mongols, there were several clans, tribes, most of them brought together by a belief that they belonged to, one set of ancestors. So they were bound by blood bonds and relations, so they looked upon each other as relatives. However, they also had ethno-linguistic relatives or relations in the neighborhood, and a lot of them. Some of them were Turks, some of them Manchus. When we say Manchus, these would be Mongolite people living in the northeast, for example, like Manchuria. When we say Turks, do not confuse these Turks with the Caucasian-looking Turks of modern day Turkey. These were also mixed up with the Mongol people. So there was, a ethno-linguistic relation with other people. Now, amazingly, some of the Mongol relatives, these were Nestorian Christians, and some were Muslims. And this particular group of Mongols that, we talk about here, they were caught in the fights of the Christians and Muslim groups, ethnic groups that were related to the Mongols. So they would one time or another come, to help either the Muslim against the Christian or Christian against the Muslims. Now, Nestorian Christians, this particular group of people that lived in modern day Syria or Turkey, these were Christians who differed from the Catholic Christians of those times, even the Lutheran Christians. So as by 1200 or 1300, there were several different, groups of Christians. So this was one particular Christian that had emerged out of modern day Syria. And so from Syria, they had moved further into East, modern day Central Asia. And this was the particular group that took Christianity originally, took Christianity to China. And so that is how whichever Christian group, wherever, they spread their brand or their sectarian group, Christianity in that area. So since the Nestorian Christians, which are referred to in the local language as Nasara, so these Nasara or Nestorian Christians, since they went to China and spread their brand of Christianity, that's why some of these early Chinese were Nestorian Christians. Later on, the British would come, they would spread Anglican Church. Before them, the Portuguese and other people would come to China and they would spread Catholicism. So this one was the very early brand of Christianity that came to China and made sense to the Chinese and even to Mongols and to the Turks, and they adapted. So after the Christians, then came the Muslims to Turkey or Central Asia and Western China and deep inside China. And so Islam spread in that area. And by this time, the rise of the Mongols, you see the problem between the Christians and Muslim and that region and how the Mongols would, become part of it. Let's see. Some of the Mongol relatives, they were shamanists, just like the Mongol also. They were shamanist, and some of them just completely atheists, did not believe in any god. However, the Mongols themselves, they believed in this everlasting blue sky, that they refer to the blue sky as if this was a god, this was a divine being. So that's why, again and again you would see in their theology referring to the blue sky. This was the will of the blue sky, that is God, that they would refer to. So they did have, a system of belief, and they would worship. However, that sort of worship or belief system did not stop them from massacring people that you would see in this presentation and the next presentation. But then that could be true of any religious group. It could be true of Christians, who went on crusades, Christian holy wars, and killed Muslims, or for that reason the Muslims who went to different places and killed people for political reason or making their empire. So let's not, blame the blue sky god that could not stop the Mongols, from whatever they did to different peoples. Let's see further. The Mongols, they were nomadic people. Pastoral lifestyle they lived in. They would nomadic and pastoral in the sense that they would cruise, in the region and would go and look for places that could provide them with food. They were horse breeders and hunters, and horse was their main item. They also were engaged in seasonal migrations in search of pastures for the herds, that they needed food, maybe more for their animal than for themselves. Also, they lived in felt tents. They ate horse meat and they drank kumis, or the fermented mare's milk. I myself, I had the adventure of drinking not the mare milk, but the camel milk, and it tastes very good. It's a little bit sour, compared to the regular milk, and because it's fermented. And sometime back home, they dry it up, and so the dry camel milk, tastes very good. But you have to have a taste for it, otherwise, you won't like it. So that's how the Mongol, they didn't have camels in that place, so they had horses. And so that's how they would drink the mare's milk and sometimes ferment it into kumis, and very tasty for them, and so they enjoyed it. Of course, horse was the main item there, so they would eat horse meat. But beside eating the horse meat, also they had sheep and goat, which does not need a lot of food or fodder, so they could have sheep and goats and they would eat those too. All right, let's see further. They lived on steppes, grasslands. These steppes or grasslands, they have a lot of grass. Good for the horses, good for the sheep and goats, because there's a lot of grass that they can eat, and people live on sheep and goat and horses, to eat them or for their milk. So they do not produce, a lot of trees. And this could be like for miles and miles, hundreds of miles, you won't see a single tree. You would see green, all green because of the grass, and no trees. And that is why people who live on the steppes, just like the Mongols did, or upper, Central Asia, these people would not have great architectural designs for which you need a lot of, trees and a lot of timber. They did not have that. So that's the reason. Do not expect from the Mongols to be living in great palaces. They lived in tents because that's the only thing that they could afford, and so they did not have strong wood or strong trees to make good wooden structures or palaces. They would have, but since they did not have, that's why they were living in tents. Let's see further. In about 1150, a great leader by the name Yesugei, he united these different Mongol tribes. So he became like the first chief or leader of the Mongols, who united them and brought them together. Also, Yesugei, he made alliances with different Mongol-related people in the region. And in this case, particularly the Karaite Mongol people, the Karaits, he made alliances with them, and to protect himself, and especially against the Tartars. Tartars, another Mongol group, but the Tartar, they did not like the family or the clan or the tribe of Yesugei, the first Mongol leader. So they tried to poison him. And also, when he was, when he got into problem with the Tartars, he was driven out of the place, and his wife and child, they had to survive, without him. Finally, the Tartar killed him. They killed the leader, the first leader of, Mongols, Yesugei. They killed him. However, his wife and child, they had to, survive without him. And so they did survive, but they, in a lot of hardships. The child, his name was Temujin. This Temujin would become later on the great Khan, Genghis Khan. So Temujin, he was a boy and lived with his mother. Both were in fact captured one time by their Tartar enemies, and he escaped. He was a young man with a lot of tricks, with a lot of courage, so he escaped, and later on he, avenged the capture of his mother. There was one time that even his wife was captured. He had to run, so he did. When he came back, his wife had been captured, and he had to, avenge also her capture and get, her released. So he had been into a lot of troubles, a lot of problems, a lot of hardships, along with his mother and along with his wife. But when he grew up, he had all these problems with a lot of people in the region, and he would go after them, as we would see. So that's a little bit, early history of Temujin. He also remembered, what happened to his father. He was poisoned by the Tartars, and in that culture, revenge is a big thing. An eye for an eye, as we see in the Hebrews, so here too, you see that there was no forgiveness. All, was revenge, and that's how they lived by it. Let's see further. Temujin, who lived, or rose to power around 1162 to 1227, he took leadership of the Mongol people because his father was leader, and he had a great courage, and people could see that in him, and that's why they would later on elect him as their great Khan. He sought help from the Karait chief called Toghrul, and this Toghrul person, the chief of the Karait Mongol people, he was also called Wang Khan. Wang Khan in the Chinese fashion, although he was a Mongol, Karait Mongol person, but he was also called Wang Khan. He was also a Nestorian Christian person, and some historians very early on, they referred to him as Prester John. Although Prester John was, centuries before him, Prester John was a legendary Christian person who had gone to China. Prester John, a legendary Christian who had gone to China to convert the Chinese people to Christianity. So centuries later, Europeans would refer to him that he needs our help. We should go and help him, as if he was still living, for 500 years. But that was, the Europeans feeling the need to Christianize the people of China. So this particular person belonging to a Mongol group, a Mongol clan, he had converted to Christianity. And that was, as I said, the Nestorian brand of Christianity, Toghrul, and that's why he was referred to as the incarnation of Prester John. So this was a new Prester John, a Christian prince among the Mongols, trying to convert other people to Christianity. And here, he comes in contact with Temujin, later on to become, Genghis Khan, as I said, and let's see what happened. Temujin sought the help of Toghrul, Wang Khan, the great Christian leader at that time, Nestorian Christian, and with his help, Temujin destroyed the Tartar group of people that had given him, his father, his mother, his wife, so many troubles, and that happened in 1201. So right in the beginning of the 13th century, Temujin is coming to power. Temujin is coming to power and trying to assert his control, not only on his own people to bring them together, just like his father did, but he wants to succeed. And he realized that without bringing them together, all of them would be, killed by the Tartar, and so he's making alliances with other people, and that shows, his leadership, how he was coming into a leader and taking care of his people. Also, he's making alliances with other people, and these alliances would not work forever because he would soon turn against his former allies once he noted that they were not anymore interested in friendship with him or with his clan, or would not protect them. And so before they could become a problem for him, he would rather eliminate it right now. So let's see further. Temujin, he turned against his previous friend Toghrul Khan, the great Nestorian Christian leader, Wang Khan. He turned against him in 1203, and the reason for that is that Toghrul Khan believed that Temujin was becoming a problem for him. So Toghrul Khan turned against Temujin, and Temujin killed Toghrul Khan and brought his Karait Mongol clan under his own control. As I said, the Karaits, these were also Mongol group, and so Temujin brought them under his control. So he is uniting different Mongol people under his leadership. Other people living in the near vicinity, Turkish Mongols, they recognized the Mongols, and the Mongols also recognized Temujin. The Turks also recognized him as a great leader. So those people who needed his protection, whether Mongols or non-Mongols in the region, they would come and seek his help. Although they would have to be very loyal to him, they would have to help him when he needed their help. So that's how he got into different alliances with other Mongol groups and Turkish tribes. Right. In 1206, he was proclaimed as Genghis Khan, which means the great illustrious Khan. Now, when I say Genghis Khan and illustrious Khan, do not confuse him with me. I carry the same last name as Khan, as you know. And the reason for that is Khan, it literally means lord, basically a landlord, and with the land came power and position in those times. So this Khan term is very common in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in Iran, also in Turkey and in Central Asia. So that's why in this whole region, Mongolia, Central Asia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and certain parts of Turkey, especially eastern parts of Turkey, and eastern Iran, you would see people by the name Khan. And so that's, don't confuse, different ethnic groups adopted that title or surname. Okay, so in 1206, he was proclaimed as the Great Khan. That means that he was the supreme leader of the Mongol people. There would be other leaders under his control. There would be Mongols, and so he would be at the top. Then beneath him would be his sons, who would be also in control of their respected areas, or there would be his grandsons who would be in control of their respective areas. So he would be at the top. So that would make him the Great Khan, as we would refer to him in this presentation. So let's see further. There is Genghis Khan. Now, in local terminology is also known as Chinggis. Chinggis, that would be Chingis, Chinggis. But this Genghis, that's a European terminology, European corrupted term, Genghis, not Chinggis. Chinggis is the local name, and Genghis is his European name. So there he is, Genghis Khan. And he doesn't look like me, so that's why you cannot confuse him with me. All right, let's see further. Mongol army, he was much more, based on the army, the military that he had. Without, army, nobody could do anything, and so was he. In the Mongol army, he had, cavalry and the mounted archers. That was the main thing in the Mongol army, the cavalry and the mounted archers. A little bit breakdown of his Mongol army. 100 men made one squadron in the Mongol army. 10 squadron made one regiment in the Mongol army. Similarly, 10 regiments made one division. And one division was consisted of 10,000 men. So if you look at this scheme, this is decimal scheme. From 10 to, 110, 110. So he used this decimal scheme to, figure it out what was a division, and now we know the 10,000 men made one division of the Mongol army, and boy, he had more than that, He also had a sort of a crack force of 1,000 men, very trusted men. But these men, the crack force of 1,000 men, these were the bravest and the most courageous people in his army. They were known for mission impossible. They would do it. That was the whole idea, that there would be someone who did not care for their lives, did not care for anything. What they cared was to accomplish the mission, no matter how hard that mission was. So these 1,000 people, the crack force, the Delta Force, if we can call them, or the special operatives, special ops forces, 1,000 men, not many, but still, these were the one who would not care for, their own lives or anybody else, and would accomplish the mission. But it was not just only the courage that these people had. Also, it was the skill that they were, trained, and that skill accompanied by the courage made them, wonderful people for in the Mongol army, and that's how they had their special place in the Mongol army. Let's see further. The Mongol army, it had different wings, left, right, and center. And they would invade their enemies from different directions. And that, was, a great strategy on part of Genghis Khan and his army. They would invade different people. I mean, in different places, they would invade people from different directions. These people used large bows, and each soldier would have about around 30 arrows, a light saber, and a lance. These were, the famous or the most used instruments that were used in the Mongol army. Also, they had steel helmets, the Mongol soldiers, and armor made of hide, not of steel, but of hide. Also, they had very strict discipline and loyalty. That was the main course, loyalty and discipline and training of the Mongol army that made them so celebrated or so ferocious and so winning in different parts of the world. Also, for the army, if they, did not live to the discipline and to the loyalty that they were expected, they could face death penalties, and some of them were awarded death penalty under what is called yasa. That was the code of Mongol traditions. Mongol conventions and traditions went into the making of this sort of a Mongol constitution called yasa, or Mongol law. Yasa, and Mongols were, punished under the yasa because they lacked, either skill or training, or they did not care and they disobeyed, or they turned disloyal, to the Mongol Khan, and that's how they were killed. So far, punishment was concerned among the Mongols, just like in some places in China also, punishment was never individual. It was always collective. If a son made a mistake, or he turned against the leader, or he did something wrong that was against the spirit or the letter of yasa, the Mongol tradition, it won't be only him that would be killed. So he was killed along with his children, entire family, maybe parents, and even all relatives, and who knows, the whole entire family and clan that he belonged to. This was to warn other people, to have a good control on their members, the family members, so they would not commit any, they would not make any trouble for the Mongol Khan, and if they did, everybody would be punished for the crime of one single person. So this is called collective punishment. And even today, in some places it is being used, just like in the problem between the Israelis and the Palestinians. If one Palestinian boy, he sends a rocket to Israel, the Israelis, they send a bomb or another rocket, and it can kill, and it has killed the whole entire family of the person. So for one rocket or one person, an entire family is wiped out. And so this is not, it may be the oldest, but also the latest practice that you see in different parts of the world, collective punishment, and it was part of the Yasa tradition and the Yasa constitution of the Mongols. Let's see further. The Mongol army also had its own intelligence on enemy's forces. They had to know how many men were there in the enemy's army, what was the terrain like, how they would approach the place and the people. So they had, their own intelligence, and it worked very well. Also, the Mongol army was known for surprise attack from all sides, and all these Mongol divisions that attacked one place, they attacked it from different directions, but in very good unity and liaison that they had, and that gave them what's called united mobility, all ganging up from different direction on the enemy from different direction at one time. So that surprise attack and coming from different directions in unity, that was the greatest achievement of the Mongol army. So what it tells us, that the Mongol army were not just only a barbarian army that went looted people, raped people, or killed people. It was an army of great skills. So Mongols, they are known for their brutality and cruelty that we will talk about, but at the same time, it was not just that only. They had great military skills, and the whole empire that they would make was built on the military skills that they utilized. But unfortunately, among the Mongols, the military aspect was so predominant in their lives, in their culture, that there was not much of the civil administration, not much of the civil life. So everything was taken by the Mongol military. And so a person could not think of anything else except the army and the army training. So to talk about like the Mongol fine arts or Mongol architecture or Mongol literature, that is just like a oxymoron. It did not exist because they never had the time, never had the mind, to produce literature or art or culture or sculpture. So that's why, the reason for that was because the army was so dominant in the lives of these people. They could not think anything except, killing, massacres, conquest, and army. Let's see. Also, the Mongol army was known for this feint flight, that they would go a place, they attack, and then they would run back. They would run back. That was to lure the enemy, and then they would come and take care of the enemy. So these are called the feint flights, the fake flights or the fake defeat that they would fake, and they would run and come back. They also massacred the conquered population, a very common practice, most brutal, but very common practice among the Mongols, that they would massacre the population. And this was a sort of skill or tactic on their part, how to control people. And they would control them through the massacres, so that the next city, the next village, the next people that they were going to visit, there would be a very clear message for them that if you resisted us, we're going to massacre you, we're going to kill everybody. All right. So the purpose, as I said, of this massacre was to instill terror in the heads and hearts of the people and break their resistance. So that is why, again and again, like in Central Asia, also in China, as well as in the Middle East, the Mongols, the leaders, they would send a simple letter to the leader of a locality and would warn them, we're coming. You have two choices. One is to submit, and nothing would happen to you. We need your submission, we need your land, we need to tax you, we need your this or that. And so all that you need to do is do not, resist. And there would be peace. We would not kill you. But if you resisted, we would kill the entire population. And you know that we're coming. So the choice was then on part of the people. There were people, they said, okay, let's fight. They're just bluffing, and we need to fight. We cannot just give them everything like that. So that they would fight, and they would lose against the Mongols. And then the Mongols, of course, true to their word, they would come and massacre the whole entire population. But there were also places where they did not carry out the massacre, because they had promised the people that if you surrender peacefully, if you do not fight, then we would leave you alone. We would not massacre you. And so they fulfilled their promise. They're true to their promise that they did not carry out the massacre of the city that they wanted to control, or they wanted to impose their will upon them. So that's how it worked. So this was practically to instill terror and break their resistance. And this really was a shocking thing for people. And as many people, throughout the world, they would not, surrender like that, give up everything to the invading forces, and hence resistance or, fight, it was also common on part of the Mongol enemies. Let's see further. All right. Making now the Mongol Empire. And let's see, before the making of the empire, what was the political situation in the Far East? There were a lot of people surrounding the Mongols. Let's start with those. The Tangut people, the Tangut state of the Xia people, that was in the west of China. The Uyghur people, these were predominantly Muslim people, they lived in the west of China. The Kara-Khitai people or Kara-Khitan people, the Liao people, they lived in the northeastern part of China. And also some of them had moved to the western part of China. Kara-Khitan, this particular group in the western, but some Liao also lived in northeastern part of China. The Jurchen people in northern China, they lived there, and especially, very close to Manchuria. Jurchen, they were the nightmare of the northern Song dynasty. And the Song people also living in southern China. The Jurchen people, they had established their own dynasty. They called the Jin dynasty or the Qin dynasty, Jin, in northern China, and the Song people, they had established, of course, themselves in southern China. So this was the situation, location surrounding the Mongol people at the time when they were just about to embark on making their Mongol empire. So I wanted to introduce some people who surrounded the Mongols at that time and how the Mongol would come and take all of them. All right. A kingdom by the name, Muslim kingdom by the name Khwarazm, that was operative for a long time in Iran and Uzbekistan, a very powerful kingdom in Iran and Uzbekistan and some parts of Afghanistan, Khwarazm Shahi as it is called locally, Khwarazm kingdom. It was a Muslim kingdom made by the Turkish, the Uzbek people, by the Iranian people and Afghan people. That's why it was very powerful kingdom, and the Mongol would go against this kingdom and take it over. All right. Let's see further. Here, a lot of group of people, I don't know if you can see read all of them, but here the, oops, I think I did something. All right. So here, this area is the Mongol area. And then they're surrounded by, as you can see from different colors, different people living in different parts surrounding the Mongols. This is the formerly northern Sung, but now it was in the hands of a Mongolite group of people, the Jurchen people. Here is the southern Sung dynasty of the Chinese people. This is the Kara-Khitai people or Kara-Khitan people. Here is the Central Asian people right there. And here is the Khwarazm Shahi of Iran and Afghanistan. So a lot of people surrounding the Mongols. The Mongols are just here, and so from here they would expand up to there, up to Europe. So this whole area that now is called Eurasia, that is Europe, right? This part is Europe and this part is Asia, so it's called Eurasia, the greatest land mass on planet Earth. And that would come under the Mongol Empire. So I wanted to give you the extent of the Mongol Empire, but at the same time, how many people there were, different ethnic groups, different languages, different belief system in the 13th century, early 13th century, when the Mongols went and brought all these people together, Christians, Buddhists, Hindus, Muslims in this whole area, and different colors. I mean, different races, Mongolite races, Arabs, Turks, Persians, Indians, the Polish, the Russians, as we would see, in their own time. So all these people were brought by the Mongols under their Mongol Empire. So here I just wanted to give you a sense of what the Mongols were up to. Okay, let's see further. Making the Mongol Empire. So first they went after the Xia people, the Tangut people in West China, and because they were becoming a big threat to the Mongol power. And so that's how the Mongols perceived this particular Tangut people as a big threat in the west of China, and so they wanted to take care of them. I mean, they wanted to conquer them. Another reason for that was the Tanguts, these people had taken to brigandage. That is, they had taken to robbery on the Silk Road. They had become robbers because the Silk Road had to go through Western China, and there the Tangut people, they would, rob the merchants. The Chinese did not like it. I mean, they hated them. Other merchants and other people did not like them because of, their famous robbery acts, and so Genghis Khan or Genghis Khan decided to go after them, and everybody would appreciate him, if he killed the Tangut Empire, which he did. So the Mongols launched about 7 invasions against the Tanguts. That tells you how powerful the Tanguts themselves were. And so he had to, invade them again and again to bring them under their control. So that's what he did. From 1207 to 1227, it's a long time, he conquered finally the Tanguts, brought them under their control, but don't be surprised if the Tanguts, the Xia people, when they would rise again in Western China. So when we say he conquered them, or the Mongol conquered a particular group of people, that does not mean that the problem is completely over. And so these people would come again to life, to power, and fight against the Mongols again. So there were, more, ferocious people, more powerful people than the Mongols in the region. One of them were the Tanguts. Let's see. The making of Mongol Empire. A Liao person by the name Guchlak. He was a prince of the Naiman people. And this person, he had come from northeast, and now he was living among the Liao people, the Kara-Khitans people in the west. And Kara-Khitan people, these were Nestorian Christians. And so he came to lead the Kara-Khitan people. In fact, first he came to take refuge among these people, and then he married among the Kara-Khitan people, and that's how he became the prince of the leader of the Kara-Khitan people. At that time, the Kara-Khitan Nestorian Christian had problem with the Karluk and Uyghur Muslims who lived close to them in Western China. And so the Christian oppressed the Karluk and the Uyghur Muslims in western part of China, and Guchlak also, he came to oppress the Karluk and the Uyghur people. He was also Christian. So the Muslim and the Uyghurs, they were oppressed, but at the same time, the Kara-Khitan people, they were rising under Guchlak, and that meant they were becoming problem for Genghis Khan. So they were like a threat, to the Mongols, and now the Mongols, they sided with the Muslims, and from about 1216 to 1218, the Mongols defeated Guchlak and his Kara-Khitan supporters. This is the time when Genghis Khan got into the problems between the Muslims and the Christians, and so he, for the first time, this is one time that he defended the Muslims against Kara-Khitan Nestorian Christians, and he defeated the Christian power in the region, and that's how he supported the Muslims. The Uyghur Muslim, they would also support him in different expeditions. They would join his forces to beat upon other people. So they needed that for their own protection, either against somebody else or against, Genghis Khan himself. They needed the Mongol protection, and so that's how they help Mongols and who work for them in their army. Let's see further. Another kingdom that we talked about, the Khwarazm, a Turkish kingdom in modern-day Iran and Afghanistan and Uzbekistan, Persia, Uzbekistan, and Afghanistan. This kingdom, very powerful. It was ruled by a person by the name Muhammad Shah. That was the king of the Khwarazm Turkish kingdom. And he first had, a friendship treaty with Genghis Khan. But that treaty he broke. And he was, dumb person, because one time Genghis Khan sent his ambassador, Mongol ambassador, to Muhammad Shah, just to ask him why you are, breaking this friendship treaty. And rather than giving the Genghis Khan a good answer, what he did, he killed the Mongol ambassador, which is against, every culture. You don't kill somebody, the messenger. And so Muhammad Shah killed the Mongol messenger, and he also, what he did, he set quite a few of them on fire, or at least their faces, fire, and they sent them back to Genghis Khan. Which was an open defiance and which was an open challenge to Genghis Khan, come, let's fight, that type of a message. So of course Genghis Khan would come and fight. Let's see what happened. So the Mongols came in about from 1218 to 1220. There was a fight between the two, and Muhammad Shah was defeated. Muhammad Shah, he reigned, and he was fleeing for his life. He went to Caspian Sea area, and there he died. He never came back. However, Muhammad Shah had a son, Jalaluddin by the name, and Jalaluddin now challenged Genghis Khan, and he also lost. There is a story about Jalaluddin, and that is he was a young man, and historians of the region, they tell us, if Genghis Khan encouraged, if Genghis Khan appreciated any person or the courage of a person, this was Jalaluddin. The way he challenged Genghis Khan, to an open field, the way he approached Genghis Khan, the way he challenged him in the letters, come, let's fight. This is how we would do and we would see. So he was very much impressed by the courage of this young man. Of course, he lost the fight. Jalaluddin lost the fight against Mongol, and he had to run for his life. So Jalaluddin, he fled to India. And the reason why he fled to India, because at that time India was under the Muslim control, and so Jalaluddin believed that he would be protected by the fellow Muslims in India. However, the Mongols went after him, chased after him in India, and so when he went to India, he created trouble for the Indian Muslims, because his going to India attracted the Mongols to India. And so now the Muslim rulers of India had to put up with the Mongol invasions. Let's see what happened. In 1221, Genghis Khan himself invaded India. He had to go after Jalaluddin because he knew Jalaluddin was a very dangerous person, and so he had to go himself to India to invade. And there in India, Razia Sultana was the Muslim ruler of India. And Razia Sultana, you may not be able to tell by her name, this Muslim ruler, she was, a woman, a young lady, and she had just come to power herself. And this young woman, Razia Sultana, she stood up to Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan was able to invade the modern day parts of Pakistan and even, Punjab. But she had forces placed in northwestern part of India and would not let him to go deep inside India, which meant if the Mongols, especially under the leadership of Genghis Khan himself, if they had ever reached India, like Delhi, and other big cities in India, two things would have happened. Number one, huge big massacres of the Indian people, of course, Muslims and Hindus and everybody else, That was one. Huge big massacres that the Mongols never did anywhere else, because India was a big population. And so big massacre, that was one. Second, if the Mongols had come about the wealth of India, if they had known, the wealth of India, then they would have gone 20 times to India again and again, even to the east of India, which is now Bangladesh, and Bengal. And so that's why she tried her best, and she succeeded in stopping him just only on the fringes of India, northwestern India, and would not let. And that goes to the credit of this wonderful young woman, Razia Sultana. Unfortunately, she had enemies inside her palace, like her brothers, and they got her killed. Once she got rid of the Mongol army, she took care of, the Mongol army and defeated them. Then she was killed by her own brothers, because they did not want her to, rule India because she was a woman. Just simple because of that reason. But her father had appointed her as his successor because he knew that she had more courage, more mental capabilities, more military skills than all her brothers, and that's why her father had picked her to succeed her. But unfortunately, her brothers in a palace revolution killed her. So that's the story about Razia Sultana. So she stopped the Genghis army from further advances into India, and as I said, and she also protected Jalal. She would not give him up, because Mongols asked her to give up Jalal, and she said, no way. And so she protected him. He survived. He went back, Jalaluddin, he went back and again challenged the Mongols, and next time he disappeared completely somewhere else. He didn't go back to India. Okay, so between 1220 and 1223, the Mongols conquered the Georgians, that is in the Caucasus region, and the Kipchak Turks in sort of modern day southern Russia. In about 1223, Mongols, they defeated the 80,000 strong Russian army because the Russians came to help the Kipchak Turks and other Georgian people in the region. But little, they knew that the Mongols would, come and, consider the Russians as their enemies, of course. And so the Mongols, defeated this 80,000 strong Russian army, a great defeat for the Russians, from which they never recovered in those times. In about 1225 to 1226, the Mongols annexed the Tangut lands in the western part of China, the Xia Empire, and so that was finished for once and for all. But don't be surprised that the Tanguts would make problems. In 1227, Genghis Khan died. And this would not be the end of the Mongol Empire. He died. This was a great, loss to the Mongol people, but he would select somebody else, to carry on the making of the Mongol Empire. Let's see. This is the Eurasian continent, okay, that I talked about. So this whole area, it's part of, Europe on the west and Asia in the east, and in between Central Asia, the Eurasian continent. And let's see, by the death of Genghis Khan or Genghis Khan, what was the extent of the Mongol Empire. Right there. So between the Sea of Japan in the east to the Caspian Sea in the west, that was the extent of the Mongol Empire by the death of Genghis Khan in 1227, and boy, it would still grow further as we go further in the presentation. In 1227, the Kurultai, that was the Mongol assembly, the Kurultai, they selected Ogedei as the great Khan, and Ogedei, he was the son of Genghis Khan, and Genghis Khan wanted him to become the next great Khan after him. So he was the son and choice of Genghis Khan, Ogedei. And he would do the same thing what his father did. Keep in mind the Kurultai, this was a Mongol assembly, although as I said, militarism was very much high in the culture of the Mongol people, but whatever they did it in consulting each other, the clans. So there was sort of a tribal democracy among the Mongol people. So they would get together on important occasion and decide collectively, and then give it to the military, the decision, and the military would carry out that decision. His capital, just like his father, it was at Karakoram in the Orkhan Valley, very important valley for the Mongols. So there they had their capital by the name Karakoram. And his main purpose, just like his father, was the world conquest. But he, Ogedei, made it much more pronounced, this conquest of the world. His father, made an empire that stretched from the Sea of Japan to the Caspian Sea in the west. And so Ogedei wanted to expand it further and bring more people under the Mongol control and conquest. And let's see. Still in the Mongol Empire, the rule of Ogedei from about 1227 to 1241, In 1234, he finally defeated the Jin Empire of the Jurchen people, whose capital was at Kaifeng. And we talked about them, back in the, previous presentation or session when we talk about the Song Dynasty. So the Jurchen people, they had removed the northern Song and they captured the Sung capital Kaifeng. But now the Mongols, defeated the Jurchen people, and that's how they conquered entire northern China. So complete northern China came in the hands of the Mongols during the rule of Ogedei. Ogedei, he sent, all his brothers, all 4 sons of Genghis Khan, Ogedei himself, Yesugei, the Chagatai, and Tule. Ogedei, Yesugei, Chagatai, and Tule. These people, these 4 brothers, they attacked the Jurchen army because Jurchen army was very, strong army. They controlled northern China. So that's why all 4 brothers or all 4 sons of Genghis Khan had to go, after the Jurchen army, and only then they could conquer northern China. And northern China, once they grabbed northern China, it opened for them southern China, which is just about to come. Let's see. In 1236, they defeated the southern Song army and annexed entire China. In 1238, in a quick succession, they invaded south central Russia and Poland and Hungary and brought it under their control. Think about it, from that little tiny place in Mongolia, the Orkhan Valley. Now they are in Russia and in Poland and in Hungary. In 1241, Ogedei died. So, by his death in 1241, they had brought, so many places under their control. His death, in fact, saved Europe from Mongol invasions. They were there in Hungary. In 1241, he died. So the Mongols had to go back. And the reason they had to go back was political. They wanted to know who would be the next great Khan after Ogedei. Let's see. So the Mongols, they went back home, for political reason. They quit the military campaign in Hungary, which they could come anytime back, to the military campaigns. So the death of Ogedei divided the Mongol Empire. His brothers and his nephews, they were in control of different places in different parts of the Mongol Empire. And so the whole Mongol Empire was divided now by 1241 into 4 major pieces. One was the Great Khanate of Kublai Khan back home in Mongolia, and entire China and Korea was under his control. So this was one piece of the Mongol Empire, which goes under the title of the Great Khanate, and it was ruled by Kublai Khan. So it included Mongolia, entire China, and Korea. Another piece of the kingdom was the Chagatai Khanate under Chagatai himself. And this included most of Central Asia. The third one was the Kipchak Khanate, which is also called the Golden Horde under Batu Khan. And this was in present-day Russia, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan. Think about it, it's a huge, big empire, cut into pieces. The last and the most celebrated one, the Ilkhanate of Hulagu Khan. That included Persia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And the reason I said it was the most celebrated because it had Iraq, the land of the 2 great rivers, a lot of food, bumper crops, the Persian, Persian art and architecture. And so this was the most celebrated so far art and architecture was concerned. And of course, that under Kublai Khan, the one in China was also the most celebrated pieces of the Mongol Empire. So right here is the whole Mongol Empire cut into 4 pieces, beginning from the north or the east, the Great Khanate, that was one. Then the Chagatai in much more in Central Asia, that was another piece. Then the Kipchak, also known as the Golden Horde Khanate, that was in modern day, Ukraine, Russia, and certain parts of Central Asia. And the last one is the Ilkhanate of Iraq, modern day Iraq, and modern day, Iraq and Afghanistan and Iran, Persia as it used to be called, modern day Iran. So this was a huge, big empire, a great empire, built, of course, on military, no question about that, built on massacres. And so this big empire, in fact, ruled different people of different ethnic backgrounds, different religions, and as you cite yourself, made all by nothing but the military conquest of the whole region. So let's see. This is almost the end of it. In conclusion, the Mongols, as we said, these were nomad people. Just to, in conclusion, the Mongols, they were nomad people. They would go from one place to another place in search of food, and they would take their horses, their cattle, especially sheep, to different places. They came to a great position, especially under the leadership of Genghis Khan, the greatest leader of all leaders, at that time. And this Mongol empire and the rise of Genghis Khan that made a great empire, it was based on the army. So we talked about, the army, the leadership of Ogedei, the son of Genghis Khan, and that also, shows to us that there was sort of a tribal democracy among the people. And under Ogedei, entire China was conquered. So that was, the greatest beast in the Mongol Empire. And there, the Mongol would establish their own dynasty, as we would see it later. And soon after the death of Ogedei, the whole empire would be divided into, 4 major pieces, as we saw. And we would continue, further in the next session. And so this would continue and would go on the conquest and the massacre of the people, and then we would say more, about the Mongol themselves. And thank you very much. Aloha.